7:30 in the morning. I got up at like 5:15, couldn't sleep. That was a lie. I realized, though, that I need to make a piñata for a friend's retirement party. I need to get on that. It's Tuesday, the retirement party's Friday, and I'm not entirely certain how I'm going to go about doing it, but I want to try and 3D print the piñata. Wish me luck. So right off the bat, with a lot of projects, one of the first things me and everyone else does is go on Thingiverse and see if this thing exists already. And of course, there's an STL of an ampersand available. So I pulled it into my slicing program, and that's when I realized that I wasn't going to have the control over it that I needed. And I also realized, I could use the text tool in Fusion 360 and make an ampersand, however big I want it, and then I have total control over it. So I made a big ampersand and I drew a box around it about the size of my 3D printer and figured out where I needed to split it into two separate bodies. I started hollowing out the ampersand with the shell tool, and I started with 1.5 millimeter walls. When I got it into Bamboo Slicer, I realized that I was looking at a 3-hour print here, and that didn't seem right. The walls were probably too thick, but it was worth a shot. It's machine time. 1.5 millimeter was way too tough. I needed it to be way weaker than what I was experiencing. I also used this as an opportunity to get away from the shell tool and just use the offset tool to create the wall thickness. I stupidly tried to make the wall 0.5 millimeters thick without realizing that I have a 0.6 millimeter nozzle in my printer. And when I brought it into my slicer, it just totally ignored the walls. So I went back into Fusion and tried a 0.75 millimeter wall thickness, brought that back into Bamboo Studio, and I had an hour and 20 minute print. So I've more than halved my print time, and let's see how strong it is. I think this is as thin as I can print it without going into vase mode. Still tough. So today's Tuesday, and my friend's retirement party is Friday. And we have a combat robotics event on Saturday. So I got all of the printing I needed to do for the robot thing out of the way. Now I'm finally focused on this piñata, and it's proving to be a little bit more difficult than I thought it would be. I feel like I spend so much of my time trying to make prints as strong as humanly possible, and now I'm trying to make them as weak as humanly possible. And it's a strange new challenge. This is where I ended up, but where I started off, this is just a 1 millimeter wall, and it's really impressively strong for PLA. Just bounces. It's just about impossible to break. The 0.75 seems to be the thinnest that Bamboo Slicer's willing to print with a 0.6 nozzle. This was hinting at good, and then I went into Bamboo and I just turned everything up as fast as I think it would go. And I think I'm at the point where the software, I'm telling the software to go faster, and it's going, yeah. I'm still going to keep going this speed. This is these settings, which I will put on the screen right now. Or over here. I'm going to be here so I can put the settings here. Is that better? Okay. the layers aren't adhering as nicely. I did a multi-part and I just taped them together and I whacked them with something in the house and scared the crap out of my wife. Very, very promising. So I'm printing up a new version now. It's the ampersand split into 3 sections. I was scaling it to like 250 millimeters to the top. I went 300 now. It just felt like it needed to be a little bit bigger. I'm printing up these 3 parts and I added little tabs to make them easier to glue together when they're all printed, and I'm fairly hopeful. If there's ever been proof positive that I am not a 3D printing enthusiast, I just really love using my 3D printer, this has got to be it. I don't know settings. I don't know slicers. I never mess with them. I have like a PLA setting, a TPU setting. I have a robot part setting with a bunch of extra walls. And sometimes I switch infill patterns, but that's legitimately all I ever do. So I'm way out of my element on this one. I'm just screwing around with stuff and I have no idea if it's doing anything. But it seems to be making things weaker. So now that everything's printed, it's just a matter of taking some CA glue and a little bit of accelerator and gluing the pieces together. Again, this was split into 3 pieces now. And the glue seems to be holding things nicely. I'm not totally worried if this is strong enough because, again, it's a piñata, so it's supposed to break. That said, I am going to try and help it not break before I want it to. At this point, I realized I needed to make the lid, so I went back to my original sketch and extruded out a 1mm lid with a 1mm lip on the inside. I think we need a bigger boat. Shh. Oh, if only they fit standing up. So early on in the process, my wife said, hey, you're putting little bottles of rum in the piñata. You should probably get the bottles of rum so that you can measure them. Well, I don't see a way of fitting those. I didn't. And I really wish I had. If the bottles were able to stand up, I'd be able to fit so much more in this piñata. Along with the rum, I wanted to put a few more things that Liz loves in there. Earl Grey tea and mints and Werther's Originals, and I hadn't even tried to get the Tootsie Pops in there yet. This was the point it became clear to me. I needed to make it bigger. So after measuring the actual bottle, I went into the slicing program and just scaled it up in 1 dimension and reprinted. Packing this piñata with the bottle standing on end was a piece of cake. I don't regret printing the second piñata one bit. I was able to fit 12 little bottles of rum, a whole box of tea, and a bunch of candy in there for Liz. And I started to tape it up. My initial thought was that the tape would hold everything together and then the glue would really lock things in. The problem was everything was so thin, there was really not a whole lot of glue surface. I went from thin super glue to a thicker super glue, but nothing seemed to work, and it was a mess. It's been a change of plans, but I think for the better. Thinking I would just super glue the lids on, and in practice, that didn't work. So I put the tape back on and I thought, okay, how about I'll spray paint over the tape? And the theme of this clip is, that didn't work. So here we are. I decided that I'd leave the tape on and I'd cover everything in newspaper and it would look like a piñata and
Bang on, was I right. It looks more like a piñata than it did before, and I love it.
I'm just using PVA glue here, and I'm not being precious one bit. It's a piñata. It's going to get smashed up. The day of, I was quite honestly very nervous. And this was the only photo of the finished piñata that I took. It's decorated with some labels representing some of the things that Liz is not going to really miss in retirement. Everyone at the party loved it, and I was really pleased with the finished overall aesthetic of the piñata. And as you can see, it worked.
Stand still. Hey, that's like some kind of liquor. Oh my God, the tool guy.
All right, so it's the weekend after the party. I've had a little bit of time to decompress, and I just got to get it out there. I don't think I could be any happier with how that piñata performed. Fact of the matter is, this was a retirement party. It wasn't a kids' party where we wanted 10 different kids getting a chance to smash this thing. There was one person who was going to hit it, and as long as it broke in a reasonable amount of time, that was the goal. I was honestly hoping for a one-hit piñata, a two-hit piñata. Absolutely stellar to me. So looking back, performance of the piñata, I'm not surprised it broke the way that it did. I had hoped that the piñata would break in the layer lines. I thought that the layer lines would be weak enough to allow a smash to start to pull it apart. But fact of the matter is, the weakest connection point in that piñata was the lid. And the tape and or the glue gave out, and that was fine. If you were looking to make a little bit sturdier piñata, which I totally understand, I would try and make the lid snap into place somehow. I should have made a full test piñata. I should have tried smashing it to begin with to see what it was really like. I didn't have enough time to do that. I could have smashed the first piñata I built, but I didn't really have time to change settings and mess around with things and go through the research and development phase all over again. So if you are looking for a one-hit piñata, just follow what I did. It worked really, really well. If you're looking for something sturdier, let me know what changes you make to a 3D printed piñata. Fact of the matter is, this piñata in my head had to be an ampersand. It was an inside joke between Liz and I just immediately knew I wanted an ampersand piñata for her retirement party. And I don't think I could have made an ampersand piñata in any other medium other than 3D printing. At first, I thought maybe I would do a 3D print and use that as like a mold for paper mache or something. And then that just seemed to be way too much work. If you make a 3D printed piñata, let me know in the comments below. If you make changes to it, slicer settings or different filament or whatever, let me know. I'm really curious to see if people do this and how they improve upon this piñata. All right. Have a good one.